"You always sit at this table," Black Waitress said to the billionaire. His reply left her stunned. What if I told you that a simple conversation between a waitress and her regular customer would change both their lives forever? 36-year-old Jasmine had worked at Murphy's Diner for 8 years, serving coffee and comfort food to folks who'd become like family. Every Tuesday and Thursday, precisely at 2:30 p.m., a well-dressed man in his early 40s would walk through those glass doors and sit at table 7 by the window. He'd order black coffee, a turkey sandwich on wheat, and always left a $20 tip on a $12 meal. Jasmine noticed things others missed. The way his expensive suit couldn't hide the weariness in his shoulders. How he'd stare out that window like he was searching for something he'd lost long ago. She'd served him hundreds of times, yet they'd never exchanged more than pleasantries about the weather or the day's special. Until this particular Thursday, when everything changed with 7 simple words that would shake them both to their core. "Where are you watching from today?" Murphy's Diner wasn't much to look at from the outside. Faded red brick, a neon sign that flickered when it rained, and vinyl booths that had seen better decades. But inside, it hummed with the kind of warmth that made strangers feel like neighbors. Jasmine had started working there fresh out of college, planning to stay just long enough to pay off her student loans. That was 8 years ago. She'd grown to love the rhythm of the place. The morning rush of construction workers grabbing coffee and donuts before dawn. The lunch crowd of office workers escaping their cubicles for an hour of real conversation. And her favorite part, the quiet afternoon lull when she could actually talk to the regulars who'd become her extended family. There was Mrs. Patterson, who came in every Friday for pie and gossip about her grandchildren. Old Frank, who'd been ordering the same meatloaf dinner for 12 years. And then there was he, the man who sat at table 7. Jasmine had tried to piece together his story over the months. The expensive watches that probably cost more than she made in 6 months. The way he'd sometimes take phone calls in languages she didn't recognize, his voice sharp with authority. But mostly, she noticed the sadness. It lived in the spaces between his words, in the way he'd pause mid-bite like he'd forgotten how to taste his food. His name, she'd learned from his credit card receipts, was Christopher. Christopher Hawthorne. She'd Googled him once during her break and nearly dropped her phone. Hawthorne Industries. Real estate empire. Net worth that made her student loan debt look like pocket change. She'd expected to feel intimidated, but instead felt something unexpected: concern. This particular Thursday started like any other. The lunch rush had died down, leaving only a handful of customers scattered throughout the diner. Christopher walked in at exactly 2:30, his usual time, but something was different. His typically perfect posture seemed strained, and there were dark circles under his eyes that his expensive concealer couldn't quite hide. He sat at table 7 without looking around, pulling out his phone immediately. Jasmine watched from behind the counter as he stared at the screen, his jaw working like he was fighting some internal battle. When she approached with his usual black coffee, she noticed his hands were trembling slightly. "The usual?" she asked gently, setting the coffee down. "Yes, thank you," he replied, but his voice was hollow, automated. Jasmine lingered for a moment, something tugging at her instincts. In 8 years of waitressing, she'd developed a sixth sense about her customers. She could tell when someone was celebrating, grieving, or just needed someone to notice they existed. Today, Christopher felt like a man drowning in plain sight. As she walked back to the counter, she overheard fragments of his phone conversation. Words like final offer, family legacy, and 30 days floated through the diner's quiet atmosphere. When he hung up, she watched him bury his face in his hands. That's when Jasmine made a decision that surprised even her. Instead of staying safely behind her counter, she grabbed the coffee pot and walked back to table 7, her heart pounding with unexpected courage. "Refill?" Jasmine asked, even though Christopher's cup was still half full. He looked up, startled, as if he'd forgotten where he was. "Oh, yes, thank you." As she poured the coffee, Jasmine noticed his phone screen was still lit up with what looked like legal documents. The words, "foreclosure notice," caught her eye before she quickly looked away. She wasn't one to pry, but the heaviness radiating from this man was almost tangible. You know, she said, surprising herself with her boldness. I've been serving you for over a year now, and I don't think I've ever seen you actually enjoy that turkey sandwich. Christopher blinked, clearly caught off guard by the personal observation. I'm sorry. You eat it like it's medicine. Every bite calculated, no pleasure in it. Jasmine set the coffee pot down and slid into the booth across from him, something she'd never done before. I'm Jasmine, by the way. I figure after all this time, we should at least know each other's names. Christopher, he said automatically, then seemed to really see her for the first time. Jasmine. That's a beautiful name. Thank you. My grandmother's idea. She said it meant gift from God in Persian. Jasmine studied his face, noting how the simple human connection seemed to ease some tension in his features. So, Christopher, what's really going on? And don't tell me, nothing. I've got 3 brothers and a son. I know the look of a man carrying weight that's about to break his back. Christopher's carefully maintained composure cracked slightly. You wouldn't understand. It's complicated. Try me. I've got time, and you look like you need someone to listen. For a long moment, Christopher just stared into his coffee. Then, as if a dam burst, the words started flowing. My father built an empire from nothing. Hawthorne Industries. Started with one small apartment building in Brooklyn and grew it into, well, something massive. When he died 2 years ago, he left it all to me. That sounds like a blessing, Jasmine said softly. I thought so too. But I'm not my father. He had instincts for this business that I just don't. Every decision I make seems to be the wrong one. We're hemorrhaging money, and today. He gestured at his phone. Today I got the final notice. If I can't come up with $43 million in 30 days, we lose the original building. The one my father started with. His legacy dies with me. Jasmine felt her heart clench. She'd expected business troubles, maybe relationship problems. But watching this powerful man, someone she'd imagined had every advantage in life, crumble under the weight of inherited expectations hit her differently than she'd anticipated. 43 million, she repeated quietly. The number was so large it felt abstract, like something from a movie. I know how it sounds. Rich man's problems, right? Christopher's laugh was bitter. But that building. It's not just an investment. It houses 47 families. Good people who've lived there for decades. When the bank takes it, they'll renovate and triple the rent. Those families will lose their homes because I failed. If this moment touched your heart, please give the video a thumbs up. Jasmine reached across the table and did something that surprised them both. She placed her hand over his. Christopher, you're not a failure. You're a man trying to honor his father while carrying an impossible burden. That takes courage. Christopher stared down at Jasmine's hand covering his, as if he couldn't quite believe this simple gesture of comfort was real. When he looked up, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. You know what the worst part is, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I never even wanted this. I was an art teacher, Jasmine. Had a little studio apartment, taught high school kids to see beauty in the world. I was happy. But when Dad got sick, he begged me to take over. Said the company was his life's work, that it needed family hands to guide it. Jasmine squeezed his hand gently. What happened to the art teacher? He died the day I put on my first suit. Christopher wiped his eyes with his free hand. Dad had this way of making everything seem possible. He'd walk into a room and command respect just by existing. I walk into that same room and feel like a kid playing dress-up. Maybe that's not a weakness, Jasmine said thoughtfully. Maybe that's exactly what those families need, someone who doesn't see them as just rental income. Christopher shook his head. Doesn't matter now. The bank doesn't care about good intentions. They want $43 million, and I don't have it. I've mortgaged everything else to keep the company afloat. This is the end of the line. Jasmine was quiet for a moment, processing everything he'd shared. In her world of tips and weekly paychecks, 43 million might as well have been 43 billion. But she understood loss, understood the weight of disappointing people who depended on you. "Can I tell you something?" she said. "When I started working here, I thought I was just biding my time. But Mrs. Chen, who runs the kitchen, taught me that every person who walks through that door is fighting a battle we know nothing about. Rich, poor, it doesn't matter. We all need the same thing, someone to see us as human." Christopher listened intently as she continued. "You've been coming here for over a year, and every time, you sit alone at this table, eating food you don't enjoy, carrying weight that's crushing you. But you never took it out on anyone. Never treated me like I was beneath you, even though I'm sure you could buy this whole diner with your pocket change." "That's just being decent," Christopher protested. "No, that's being rare." Jasmine's voice carried the conviction of someone who'd served hundreds of customers, some kind, some cruel. "You want to know what I think? I think your father didn't do wrong when he left you the company. I think he saw something in you that you can't see in yourself." Just then, Jasmine's phone buzzed with a text from her babysitter. Her 8-year-old son, Marcus, was home from school, probably doing homework at their tiny kitchen table. The contrast hit her like a physical blow. Here she was, offering comfort to a billionaire, while she'd been skipping meals to keep up with rent. Have you ever faced something like this? Let us know in the comments. But as she looked at Christopher's broken expression, she realized this wasn't about money anymore. This was about two people recognizing their shared humanity across a divide that should have been impossible to bridge. "What if," she said slowly, "we figured this out together?" Christopher looked at Jasmine as if she'd spoken in a foreign language. "Together? Jasmine, this isn't something that gets solved with good intentions. The math is ruthless. $43 million in 30 days, or 47 families lose their homes." "I know I can't write you a check," Jasmine said, her voice steady despite the enormity of what she was suggesting. "But I know things you don't. I know what it's like to live paycheck to paycheck, to stretch a dollar until it screams. I know what those families are facing because I've been there." She pulled out her phone and showed him a photo of her son, a bright-eyed boy with a gap-toothed grin, doing homework surrounded by textbooks she'd bought second-hand. "This is Marcus. I'm raising him on my own, working 2 jobs to keep us afloat. 6 months ago, our rent went up by 40%. I know exactly what those families will go through if they lose their homes." Christopher studied the photo, something shifting in his expression. "He looks like a good kid." "He is. And he's why I understand this differently than your business advisors do." Jasmine leaned forward, her voice gaining strength. "You said you tried to sell assets, tried traditional financing. But what about the families themselves? What about the community? I don't follow. What if instead of seeing them as tenants, you saw them as partners?" The idea was forming as she spoke, pieces clicking together in her mind. "You said your father started with 1 building. How? Where did he get the money?" Christopher frowned, searching his memory. He talked about it sometimes. The families in the neighborhood pooled their resources. They knew he was honest, that he'd keep rents fair. It was like a community investment. "There's your answer." Jasmine's eyes lit up. Not one billionaire trying to save everyone, but a community saving itself. You provide the framework, the legal structure, the management. They provide the investment capital. Jasmine, these are working families. They don't have millions to invest. But they have thousands. And there are millions of people who care about affordable housing, about community investment. Crowdfunding, community bonds, impact investors, people who want to do good with their money. She was talking faster now, the vision becoming clearer. You're not just saving a building, you're creating a model. Community-owned housing that stays affordable forever. Christopher sat back, his business mind starting to engage with the possibility. That would require restructuring everything. "You know," he said slowly, "my father always said the best business ideas solve real problems for real people. I've been so focused on preserving his empire that I forgot about preserving his values. If you've been enjoying this story, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming tales. Jasmine watched as Christopher pulled up contacts on his phone, his movements gaining purpose and energy. For the first time in over a year, the man sitting at table 7 looked like he was truly awake. "So," she said with a grin, "ready to try something completely different?" 6 months later, Jasmine was wiping down table 7 when Christopher walked through Murphy's diner doors, right on schedule. But this time, he wasn't alone. A woman in her 60s with silver hair and laugh lines walked beside him, along with a young man who looked strikingly like Christopher but with paint-stained fingers. "Jasmine!" Christopher's smile was broader than she'd ever seen it. "I'd like you to meet Mrs. Rodriguez from the building. She's our new community board president. And this is my brother Michael. Turns out I'm not the only artist in the family." Mrs. Rodriguez grabbed Jasmine's hands warmly. "Mija, I've heard so much about you. You saved our home, you know that." "We all saved it together," Jasmine said, but her heart swelled with pride. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of community meetings, legal paperwork, and late-night planning sessions. The Hawthorne Community Housing Initiative had not only saved the original building but had attracted enough investment to purchase and convert 3 more buildings in the neighborhood. Christopher slid into his usual spot at table 7, but everything about him was different. The weight that had pressed down on his shoulders was gone, replaced by the easy confidence of someone living in alignment with their values. "The turkey sandwich isn't actually terrible," he said with a laugh. "I was just too stressed to taste it before." "I told you so," Jasmine said, pouring coffee for the table. "And how's the art program going?" "Better than I ever imagined," Michael spoke up, his voice carrying the same warmth as his brother's. "We've got 40 kids enrolled in the after-school program. Some of them have real talent, reminds me of Christopher when we were young." "Before I forgot how to see beauty," Christopher added, but there was no bitterness in it now, only gratitude for rediscovering what he'd lost. Mrs. Rodriguez pulled out her phone to show pictures of the building's new community garden and art studio. "The children, they paint murals now. The whole neighborhood feels different, like we matter, like we're building something lasting." Jasmine looked around the table at these 3 people who had become so much more than a customer and his friends. They'd become family, bonded by the shared experience of choosing hope over fear, community over isolation. "You know what the best part is?" Christopher said, raising his coffee cup like a toast. "I finally understand what my father was really trying to teach me. It was never about the money or the empire. It was about using whatever power you have to lift people up." "To lifting each other up," Mrs. Rodriguez agreed, raising her own cup. As they clinked coffee cups around table 7, Jasmine thought about how a simple conversation had changed all their lives. Sometimes the most profound moments came disguised as ordinary afternoons, as routine encounters between people who might never have truly seen each other otherwise. Christopher caught her eye and smiled. "Same time Thursday. Wouldn't miss it," she said, and meant it completely. If you enjoyed this story, please remember to like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more heartwarming tales. Thank you for joining us on this journey. May we all have the courage to see the humanity in every person we meet.